What's up, Flannelverse? We are here. We are ready to break down the Saturday 2-game slate. Yes, I am going live at midnight Central Time, 1 a.m. Eastern. This was not necessarily the plan. Didn't really have a plan. I knew I wanted to do something, and just looking at all the work I have to do today and all the work I have to do tomorrow, this was kind of the only time that made any sense for me to do this video. So we're here, and we're going to do it. We're going to do a late night video breaking down this 2-game slate. I'm going to try to be pretty efficient here because I do want to go with the usual structure, which is going to be going through the first. We're going to go through the main slate, the 2-game slate, and we're going to be going the usual quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. Talk about, I guess we don't have to talk about defenses maybe a little bit, and then I'll play around with lineups, take any questions at the end. Then I'll flip over, just briefly look at the showdown stuff, just look at pricing, projected ownership, stuff like that, because I will have already gone through all of the, usage trends, the defensive matchups. So that stuff we'll cover. So it'll be pretty quick going over the showdown slates at the end, but want to get through first, going position by position. And of course, as you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you want to chat while the channel is live, while the show is live, you need to be subscribed to the channel. There's going to be a 5-minute grace period after you subscribe before you can chat in the channel. So if you want to, make sure you subscribe ASAP. I'm not trying to keep people out, but I am trying to keep out the bots. They have been a pretty big issue, and it seems like the more I can, put a little bit of a gate on chat, the better it is as far as avoiding some of those bots. Anyway, like I said, we're going to be going position by position. We did already get a super chat, so wanted to give a shout out to Carlos. Appreciate you, Carlos, sending me a little bit of love for the late night stream. You are the man, Carlos. Appreciate all of you, of course, being here after hours for an unplanned stream. This is kind of impromptu. I was out on the town having some cocktails, have one more for the show. So hopefully nobody is going to watch this in the morning and be completely hungover and see me sipping on a whiskey and throw up. That is something that might happen if you watch this hungover in the morning. All right, let's get to it. As Pepperoni says, yes, I will have time to make lineups here. I'm going to try to be efficient, though. I'm going to try to be pretty quick in this video. Of course, you can always just watch it on 2x speed if you're watching it in the morning. If it does go long, what's up, Meg? Good to see you here. Bindles, a lot of familiar names, friends in the chat. All right, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. And quarterbacks, I'm going to be especially efficient. I'm just going to basically read off my notes on the quarterbacks because quarterbacks are pretty simple here. Lamar Jackson is clearly the top projected player, quarterback on the slate by 3 full fantasy points. As you see here, also getting 44.5% ownership. Lamar Jackson leads a Ravens offense ranked 24th in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. It doesn't really matter for Lamar because he gets a lot of his fantasy points on the ground. He's averaging 25.2 fantasy points per game over the past 5 weeks. Just insane how good Lamar is. Steelers defense, though, has allowed the 4th fewest schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. They've been great all year. So that's the only reason we have to consider fading Lamar. We know that he is an awesome fantasy quarterback, but it's a really tough matchup for Lamar, and he's expensive. He's getting a lot of ownership. So I guess those are the reasons to think about not playing Lamar. I suspect I will end up underweight on Lamar, and we'll talk about some of the reasons there. There are other quarterbacks that I'm going to lean into a little bit more. But if you want to play Lamar, like he makes a ton of sense. Just one of the best fantasy players in the game. Then we have Patrick Mahomes is the next best projected quarterback at 6,400, getting, all the rest of the quarterbacks here. Mahomes, 23% ownership, Stroud, 19%, Russell Wilson, 14%. So 23% ownership going to Mahomes seems fine to me. Mahomes leads the Chiefs offense ranked neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. We're throwing it quite a bit. He averages 18.6 fantasy points per game over that span. Of course, getting Hollywood Brown for the first time of the year, maybe that sparks the offense a little bit. Doesn't seem like that matters for the Chiefs. They're not really trying to blow teams out, score a ton of points. Also not the best matchup. Texans defense has allowed the 11th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. So a little bit of a below average matchup for Mahomes. Honestly feels kind of meh to me just because he has not really shown the desire to have blow up games where he throws for 5 touchdowns. Maybe surprises us on a Saturday. not the quarterback that I'm in love with. I suspect I end up slightly underweight to Mahomes. CJ Stroud leads the Texans offense ranked second in neutral pass rate over the past 5 weeks. So they have been throwing the ball a bit recently. However, he averages 14.1 fantasy points per game over the past 5 weeks. Chiefs defense has allowed the ninth fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the past 5 weeks. I see Debro in chat saying that he is a fan of CJ Stroud tonight. And yeah, I get that. I think that so he's not my favorite, but I don't hate it. I think Stroud looks like a strong play at 19% ownership. That's low enough that I do have at 6,000. He also his primary pass catcher, Nico Collins, is my favorite pass catcher, I think, on the slate, my favorite spend up option on the slate. So just pairing my favorite spend up option with his quarterback makes a lot of sense. I'll probably be a little bit above weight to CJ Stroud. And then finally, we have Russell Wilson. And I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on Russell Wilson, because to me, this looks like an amazing spot to play Russell Wilson on the game slate. But there are maybe some more warts recently in the matchup than there had been earlier in the year. Russ projected for fewest fantasy points of any quarterback here on this slate. He is 5,700, but he's only projected for 14% ownership. So the 14% ownership to me is really appealing for Russell Wilson. Steelers just 22nd in neutral pass rate in the past 5 games. Russ averaging 15.1 fantasy points over that span. So actually averaging more fantasy points than CJ Stroud over the past 5 weeks. Ravens defense. So this is here. I'll pull it up here so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. It's been the worst matchup in the league over the past 5 weeks. It's a 4-game sample for the Ravens defense, but that does give me some concern, because part of the reason that I love Russ here is it for most of the year has been a great matchup for quarterbacks. It's been just a complete pass funnel defense against Baltimore. As you can see here, they're still top 10 on the season, top 8 on the season, 8th best matchup on the season for quarterbacks, and better through the air than on the ground. So I have a little bit of concern with the fact that they have been just way, way better in recent weeks. But because it's a 2-game slate, because he's getting 14% ownership, I am going to lean in on Russ a little bit. Curious to hear you guys' thoughts. Debro says no ceiling without Pickens. That might be true. Part of the reason that I think Russ is interesting, though, is because his pass catchers are also super cheap. Like Pat Freiermuth is fairly inexpensive. It's like 3,800. Calvin Austin's really inexpensive. Van Jefferson's getting no ownership. So just if you think that the Baltimore defense does struggle a bit here, then I think it's going to be a great spot for Russ. And I'm going to be playing certainly above weight to 14%. That's going to be one of my bigger leverage spots. Is going to be I shouldn't even call it a leverage spot. One of the bigger stands I take on the slate is I'm going to be probably double the field on Russ at 14%. I'm probably going to have closer to 30% Russ. And the reason is just he's getting low enough ownership that I think he can easily you can separate from the field pretty quickly with the ownership he's getting. He's also only 5,700, so he doesn't need to have a massive game, especially on this slate. I think that there's a real possibility that nobody has a great fantasy performance of the quarterbacks on this slate. We could see Lamar Jackson get 21, Patrick Mahomes get 14, CJ Stroud get 13, and Russ gets 12, and Russ is the one that you want. So I don't think he needs to do much, but I also think that he certainly on this slate, because there's a lot of tough matchups here, could be a really low scoring slate. I wouldn't be that shocked to see Russ be the highest scoring quarterback on this slate, even without putting up a massive score. Like if he throws for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think that might be enough to be the highest scoring quarterback on the slate. And he's the cheapest. So I think that you don't necessarily need him to be awesome against the Ravens to have a great game. You don't need to see you don't need the same kind of upside that you need on a full slate. So yeah, as Debro says, island games get weird. I mean, this is close enough to be in an island game. So because I like the pass catchers, because I like Russ, you can do the stack really inexpensive. And if you do that, then you can pay up for multiple pay up options around him. So you can pay up for Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, etc. Whoever you want to surround that stack with. So I think that Russ makes a lot of sense on this slate, even if you're a little bit nervous that maybe the Ravens have gotten better defensively against quarterbacks in recent games, and maybe Russ doesn't have the same upside without Pickens. Like that makes sense. Like Pickens is clearly his best receiver. Sure, he certainly doesn't have the same massive upside, but I just don't think you need to show that massive upside on a 2-game slate necessarily, particularly a 2-game slate where it could be a really low scoring slate, I think. So all that said, I like Russ quite a bit. He is going to be my biggest stand at quarterback. I'll probably be double the field there. But yeah, I think CJ Stroud, like to your point, 16% ownership going to CJ Stroud, same kind of a play as to CJ Stroud. Like you need him to outscore Russ because he is $300 more expensive. But he still doesn't need to be the highest scoring player on the slate. He's still not getting a ton of ownership. So I like that also. I probably come in overweight the 2 lower owned quarterbacks, a little bit underweight the 2 higher owned quarterbacks. I don't know. I was going to say I think Mahomes is the one that I'm the least enthusiastic about, but I think I'm probably with the field there. I think probably Lamar is the one that I'm eating into the most as far as the ownership goes, and that's largely because he's 8,200 in a tough matchup. So even if he scores 22 fantasy points here, I think he might not be the quarterback that you want anyway. Okay, going to move on, talk about running backs here. I'll stop in, see if anybody's asking any kind of questions. All right. D-Russ says he leans to the pass rates. Kansas City and Houston have been chucking it. Yeah, so I think Stroud is, for that reason, also a pretty strong option. I think that, yeah, certainly that makes sense to, if you think that game could potentially score a lot of points, then obviously that does make sense to lean into that game. I think that if you want to lean into the pass rates, it also could make sense to just full on like game stack that one. And that's one of those things on a 2-game slate. I guess we should talk a little bit of like the game theory. I think it makes a lot of sense to lean more into game stacks also on a 2-game slate. If you think that game that they are just going to be chucking it the whole game, then yeah, just like loading up on that game could also make sense rather than the Steelers and Steelers and Ravens game. It could shoot out. I'm not super confident just because the Chiefs haven't really been like putting up a ton of points on the season. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about running backs. Top projected running back on the slate is actually Joe Mixon. Depending on where you look, very, very close between Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon. They project very similarly. Both have been awesome all year. Kind of undeniable how awesome both Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon have been. Derrick Henry in the past 4 games has 70 carries and 3 targets on 22.9% route participation. Steelers defense has allowed the 7th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So really tough matchup for Derrick Henry. He's not really involved in the passing game. So I don't totally love it. He's 59% owned. I think my preference is Mixon just because he's a little bit more involved in the passing game. I guess it's also like an equally bad matchup for Joe Mixon. But over the past 5 weeks, Joe Mixon has 66 carries, so just 4 fewer carries than, I guess that's 5 games for Mixon and 4 for Henry over the past 5 weeks. But 66 carries for Joe Mixon, so still really strong usage on the ground, but also 21 targets over. That's 4 games for both of them. So yeah, we're looking at the same sample size. So over the past 4 games that each of them has played, Joe Mixon just 4 fewer carries than Derrick Henry, but 18 more targets, just way more involved in the passing game on 52.7% route participation. Also a really tough matchup for Joe Mixon, though. Chiefs defense has allowed the 2nd fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. So kind of a tough matchup for both running backs. But ultimately, I like that Mixon's involved in the passing game, really raises both the floor and the ceiling. And, when we talk about running back passing game involvement, I think some people think of it as just like, oh, you get 3 catches, you get 3 fantasy points for them. But you also get the yards that go along with it, the potential touchdowns. Like, so I do think that it's kind of underrated, the passing game involvement for running backs, even on half PPR sites. Like, I think that, people want to think of it as just like, oh, it's just 3 or 4 PPR points, whatever, not the end of the world. But really, it's a lot more involvement overall, and just ways to find ways to get your running back going in tough matchups. With that said, Derrick Henry, we know, is just can beat any defense. Like, he's just a beast. Has been that way his whole career. Even in tough matchups, he can go off. So even against the Steelers defense, I think Derrick Henry looks like a strong play. Debro thinks that Henry could get fed since Baltimore is missing some pass catchers. They're missing potentially Bateman. We'll get into the receivers. I think we're leaning toward Bateman being gone, and it does make things interesting. Missing, Bateman's gone, and then also Nelson Aguilar already ruled out. So how are they going to play that? We'll talk about that more when we get to receivers, tight ends. But yeah, certainly you're right. Like, it could just be, okay, let's feed it to Derrick Henry 30 times, or like Henry and Lamar are just running all game. Would not be that surprising. But again, part of the reason that I'm playing a ton of the Steelers stacks is to allow me to play more of, I think I prefer Mixon just slightly overall, but also allows me to play more of Henry, who I think is also a really strong play. I don't even know if I'll be underweight to the field there, because again, I'm playing a lot of cheap stacks to be able to pay up more. So yeah, I think Henry is pretty close there between Henry and Mixon. I think both, and you can see it here in the projections. They project about the same. They're getting about the same amount of ownership. I think that I'm a sucker for passing game involvement for running backs, so I think that's part of the reason that I'm slightly more slightly prefer Joe Mixon. But Derrick Henry is just awesome. What else can you really say about him? And then it's kind of a big gap. So those two are kind of on their own as the 2 best running backs on the slate. Like, you can see it in the projection here. There's a 5-point projection gap between Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, and the next best running back on the slate. Those being, and I guess we're not going to do it team by team here. We're just going to work our way down the list. Najee Harris, next best in terms of projection. Najee is 5,700. Najee over the past 5 weeks has 72 carries and 14 targets. So a little bit of passing game involvement. 14 targets, not bad over the past 5 weeks, just under 3 targets per game. 72 carries, pretty strong usage there. Also, not the best matchup. Ravens defense has allowed the 11th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs over the past 5 weeks. I think Debro was making a note about maybe there's some holes there. Tell me about this, Debro. You think that there are? Oh, you say you're fading Najee, but you like Warren. Okay. Let me find the Baltimore has given it up to receiving backs, which is okay. One more reason to potentially like Jaylen Warren, as Debro says. So I guess as long as we're talking about Najee, you kind of need to. Oh, look at this! Look at this! I got a crew showing up here to support me on the show. We got Debro in chat, but we got some of the boys here to chat. Let me see how I can do this with 3 now. How does this work? All right, I'm gonna throw. Nope. Okay, hang on. I gotta do this. I gotta do this differently to fit them on the screen. All right, give me 1 second, guys. All right. Let's try. Nope, that didn't work. All right, give me one. I think I gotta do a custom stream here. Give me guys 1 second to adjust the layout. I guess this is the first time that I've had a 3-person layout. All right. Some special guests from another podcast. Oh, and I gotta do another. How do I do one more of these? I've done it before. I know I can do it. Camera slot. Wait, dynamic camera grid. That's what I want. I'm going to remove that. Do this. Not that way. All right, hang on 1 second, guys. There we go. Now it's working. There we go. All right. Boom. Boom. Let's go. Oh, I thought I was going to be added to this. All right, I'm going to remove myself for 1 second. See if you guys can. Okay, before I remove myself, I'm just going to say we got two great guys here. First of all, Fantasy Guru Drew is right below me, one of the best DFS players on the planet, and then we have Cubs all-star Justin Steele, one of the best baseball players on the planet, joining us as well to talk through these games. You guys, how are you doing tonight? Do you guys have drinks on you?
I was in bed and Justin and I were texting, and I was like, do we just surprise him? And here we are.
Beautiful. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Justin, where are you these days? You're home, right?
Yes, I'm at my new house in Arizona right now. I went to a housewarming party for one of my old strength coaches tonight, and then I got back. You texted me just as I was getting back. I got my son down, got him to sleep, and yeah, I was kind of wanting to talk some football, so here we are.
Love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well,
Debro says we're going to make him get on. I think we need to.
I mean, if Debro wants to come on, then Debro is going to come on. For those who are unaware, we did several streams with the four of us, the three on screen, and then Debro did several best ball streams, which several of us, like we made the playoffs in those. Like, went way better for me than underdog, and I think it did for you guys also. I saw each of you win at least one of those, but I'm not sure if any of those teams of mine are still around.
I'm all the way out on my best ball teams now.
Are you really?
I got put out the last round.
Man,
I got 5 still running. Keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah, I got you got 5 in the Millie Makers?
In the Millie.
Oh, is that did you end up doing the 150?
Yeah, 150 in the $20 DraftKings Millie, and I got 5 still in. I'm happy.
That's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, Steele not on screen. I was wondering because I can't see him. I'll go off camera so the people can see Steele.
You can't see Steele?
No.
Oh, hang on.
I can't see myself either.
All right. Here.
I was just going with it.
That's what I was wondering. I can't see. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
So I could see you guys because I was editing. So I could see. I thought that you guys could see what I was editing, where I could see both of you on the screen. That's my bad. So you guys, at least you could hear Steele. Could not see him. All right. So I could not figure out how to do this layout perfectly. So if Debro does jump on here, yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. So did you guys hear the discussion at all of quarterbacks? I'm curious where you guys. So I'm thinking that Russell Wilson is like my favorite play of the slate from a just like he's getting 14% ownership. Seems like a pretty strong matchup, but it's been the worst matchup over the past 5 weeks for quarterbacks against the Ravens. I know Drew has been kind of a fan of keeping it simple, stupid when you got guys like Lamar on the slate. How do you guys feel about quarterbacks?
Yeah, Justin and I were texting a little bit before I even knew that you were going to come on. Do you know what defense has allows the lowest opposing QB passer rating in the league?
I would guess the Steelers, but no, I don't.
Texans.
Okay.
And they also allow the lowest opposing completion percentage in the league, also the Texans. And we have Mahomes with a high ankle sprain that he's playing through.
Yeah.
I'm playing 150 tomorrow, and I think I'm full fading Mahomes, which I know is scary, but I don't think I'm touching him.
I don't hate that as far as the fade goes.
Yeah, especially with that high ankle sprain. I completely forgot he did that. I'm glad you reminded me of that because it was the plays coming back to my head. It was kind of bad, and he was limping pretty bad on it. So glad you reminded me of that.
Yeah, I thought he was going to miss like multiple weeks.
Yeah,
same. Yeah, it looks bad. It looks bad.
Yeah.
I can't find a rushing prop for him. If there was one at like his typical 18 to 20 yards, I would take the under for sure.
Drew's on it. That's short.
Yeah. Do you have
discounted down to like 14 to 15, but I'd still like the under.
Wiley's saying Lamar and don't look back.
Wiley's here.
I think that's kind of what I'm leaning towards as well as playing Lamar.
He's so expensive though. That's the downside. Have you played around with lineups at all? Like you
well, the thing is, it's Hollywood. Yeah, you could put Hollywood Brown in there at $3K.
True.
And then that automatically frees up salary for Lamar. And I mean, the thing is, you got to find out like what to pair with Lamar. Like, do you go Mark Andrews? Do you go Zay Flowers? Do you double stack? Do you like? And then as far as the bringbacks, me and Drew was talking. I kind of like Najee on the bringback for that game. You know, George Pickens out. I mean, the pass catchers that I would like go toward instead of him is like Pat Freiermuth at tight end. I don't really know. I think C. Austin, I can't remember his first name.
Calvin Austin, yeah.
Yeah, when the last game when Pickens was out, I think he had like 5 receptions.
Yeah, no, he's been targeted, I think, 8 times in the past 2 games without Pickens. So yeah, I like Austin also. Yeah, so you're thinking, but as a bring back. So Austin,
yeah, as a bring back for it. Like if you were to like kind of pick one game that you're thinking is going to be outscoring the other one, and kind of like what Drew and I was talking about earlier, like the Texans defense pretty good, Chiefs defense obviously good. You know, if you just kind of pick the other game, if you hit it right, you can win some money.
Yeah. I'm gonna try one more time to
And now we're here at the no huddle.
There we go.
Oh, it didn't work.
Turn it over.
So sorry, I did that before I explained what I was doing. I took myself out. So what I was trying to do there is I want to get us in one. It's supposed to be dynamic screen so that we can all be together, like in a line here. Like I'm a little bit of a different size screen at the top there. All right, I don't think that Debro is showing up. I thought maybe he's still preparing. Well, I guess I'll stop delaying. I was kind of trying to delay a little bit in case Debro's going to join, but we'll just if he joins, then he joins, and I'll throw him to the right of me on the screen. I think that we'll be able to figure that out pretty quickly.
I wouldn't hold my breath, but all right.
Well, he said that he was maybe going to join. Okay,
no, that you'll be able to figure it out.
Oh, okay, that's funny. All right, so. As far as quarterbacks we like, Steele's thinking Lamar. Drew, are you kind of on the same page? I know you're fading.
Yeah. I ran just a little bit ago, and literally when I saw that you jumped on, I was like, I still got like an hour worth of work on this, so let me jump on and let's do this together. But I ran a quick early build fading Mahomes, and I have 80% Lamar to start. So I don't think I'll land at that much, but I bet he'll be my top quarterback.
All right. So moving on to the running backs that I already went through it a bit with Mixon and Derrick Henry, and they both have like bad matchups. They project about the exact same. Do you guys have a lean as far as Mixon versus Derrick Henry?
Steele?
I think Mixon, just because of the pass catching opportunity. I think if the Texans are going to be, competing in that game, Mixon's going to he's going to have to catch a few passes out of the backfield, maybe get in that way. It's kind of, it's tough at the running back position. That's kind of why I was like, maybe Najee, because if there's same situation, if they're going to stay in that game, I could see him catching some dump off passes. George Pickens not there. It's pretty spare at the running back position. It's tough.
Yeah, it is.
I spent some time looking at the advanced data from Fantasy Points. The rushing defenses are a little bit hard to kind of parse out and identify anything really interesting. They're all like top half of the league and everything. Not at the very top, but let's say that like 5 to 12 range. All 4 of them are pretty good. I think you go for opportunity, salary saving. There was a little bit of, and I think Debro would like this if he comes on too, the success rate between zone and man gap concept. It really shined for Najee. I know we're talking if we go with Mixon or Henry, but overall, I think, if you need the salary savings, I think running back is a decent spot to save a little salary. Yeah,
no, I kind of on the same page there. I think that there are some interesting options here. What about Najee versus Jaylen Warren? I'll pull up the recent game logs. Actually, I'll just pull up like the past 5 weeks here so we can kind of compare their usage over the past 5 weeks.
Drew, you're not going to lock button Justice Hill?
I mean, I'm going to play him. Absolutely. He's getting a ton of work, a ton of passing work. I don't think this is going to be the game that they're in catch-up mode, right? Or necessarily needing to score a lot. So I actually do think the game script favors Derrick Henry a little bit. But Justice Hill is in on any 3rd and 5+, and that's a lot of work.
Dude, I love Justice Hill. Made me a lot of money that week
1 to kick it off with a bang.
Yeah.
Yeah. He So over the past 4 games, Justice Hill has 11 carries, but he also has 18 targets on 59.5% route participation. That's pretty strong route participation for Justice Hill. Yeah, on a slate where like we don't have that many really interesting low owned options. I'm with you. I think Justice Hill looks like a pretty intriguing one. Actually, what is his ownership coming in at? He's coming in 13% owned. I think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
Do you have any issues with playing the two of them together, Henry and Hill?
Probably not on a 2-gamer. I don't like it. Like I would never do it on a main slate, but on a 2-gamer, I think that you can.
And same with Jaylen Warren and Najee on a 2-gamer. I think anything applies.
Yeah, no, definitely with you there. So Najee Harris coming in at 40% ownership, Jaylen Warren 27%, Warren being 5,200, Najee 5,700. I just pulled up their actually I'll pull it up now. Their stats over the past 5 games. Najee Harris 72 carries to Jaylen Warren's 36, so just exactly doubling them up. The targets not actually favoring Warren by as much as I would have thought they would. 14 for Najee, 17 for Warren over the past 5 weeks. Warren does have the better route participation, 43% to 28%. But man, that's I would have thought that would favor Warren more. I'm going to pull up the like full game log so to see if like there's any indication like recent weeks of Warren getting more. But do you guys have a lean on Najee?
How involved was Warren the last time they played? The last time they played, I know Najee was pretty involved. I think he had like 22 total touches
in week 15, or you mean they played
last time they played? Yeah, week 15.
So week 15, yeah, Najee had 6 carries and just 1 target.
No. The last time they played, Steelers-Ravens.
Oh, Steelers-Ravens.
It was a few weeks ago.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. In that game, Najee 18 carries, 5 targets. Jaylen Warren had 4 targets and 9 carries.
Gotcha.
So yeah, Najee, like they really leaned on Najee in that game. I don't know. So 40% Najee, I think seems pretty reasonable to me. How do we feel about the 27% going to Jaylen Warren?
I probably wouldn't have that much. I won't personally.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. With a couple running backs here, who I'm fading is a couple of the small ones like Kareem Hunt, a couple of small ownerships, P. Ryan, Patterson. No thanks, right? Like even though it's a 2-gamer, I can't really do any of that. The really interesting one is Pacheco to me. If you think that he's healthy now and can hit the ground running, I think Pacheco's a play probably over a Jaylen Warren, but probably on par with a Najee. So if it goes for me, I'm probably actually going to go Najee and Pacheco probably tied, and then Jaylen being a distant third, if you will, between those 3.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, like Pacheco, better usage over the past couple weeks, 27 carries over the past couple weeks. Still just 21.4% route participation and 5 targets. I guess 5 targets is not that bad, but 21.4% route participation. I'd like that to be a little bit higher, obviously. Again, like you said, Drew, like Texans defense allowed the 10th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs, just like nothing standing out from a matchup perspective.
The upside of Pacheco is just unlike anything else on this slate based off of that ownership as well. You know, it's he has 20-point upside, almost as good as Henry, and I would argue almost as good as Mixon as well. And if he's healthy, and if they're going to rely on Mahomes a little bit less because of the ankle injury, and you might see a little bit of short passes, screenplays, 15 plus carries for Pacheco. I mean, it's really interesting to me.
No, I like that call. I think Pacheco looks like a strong play to me also at 6,000. Yeah, I mean, I think those 4 are kind of the pretty clear top 4, and then Warren is kind of like reaching to be different a little bit, but I don't know.
I mean, Warren has that 50-yard TD play, you know, that he can break that, and you're obviously going to need him. What's the likelihood of that? Probably, 10 to 20%, and that ownership's coming in at 30% plus. I think it's a spot to be underweight on.
Yeah, I think a little bit underweight. Like I don't want to be crazy underweight. He did have 4. Look at how many games in a row. 4 games in a row with 4 targets before just one last week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I keep on thinking the passing game usage is going to improve. I guess the route participation has come up the past couple weeks, 48% and 54%. So that's a little bit of a promising trend, I think, in the route participation. But yeah, I think a slight underweight stance there probably makes sense. And you say, Drew, you're not going anyone. Are you doing any like Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, no Kareem Hunt. I just think he's slowly being phased out. I think he's awful now.
Steele, any of these other running backs for you outside of the top 4?
The only ones I have checked marked right now are Justice Hill, Najee, Pacheco, Henry, and Mixon. What I do with the ownerships between them, I'm not quite sure. I'm still deciding.
Okay.
It's honestly been a while since I've been on Sabre, so I'm trying to get my thumbs back underneath me.
All right. But so those are the 5 that you're planning on playing, or just the big 4 and Justice Hill?
Yeah,
right.
and possibly Jalen Warren as well. I'm still debating.
Yeah, I think I'll include Jalen Warren in my player pool, but I think I'm with you that
Yeah.
I'm going to be underweight there at least.
Yeah.
It's really tough out of those 5 to really X mark any of them. And I think if you force my hand to do one of them, I think it's probably Jalen Warren.
If you're to get rid of one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you're forcing me to get rid of one, I think it's
same. I'm in the same boat.
I think so. Running backs, quarterbacks, those are kind of the 2 more straightforward positions. You ready to talk some wide receivers?
Yeah, that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. I guess we can start with the Texans, who even the Texans, John Mechie's out, so it is actually sort of interesting. Also, I was ready to say like Texans pretty straightforward, but no, John Mechie is out for the Texans. Nico Collins though is the top projected wide receiver on the slate by over 3 fantasy points. He's projected for 57% ownership. I think I'm eating that ownership and might even come in overweight on Nico Collins. You on the same page?
Yeah. Yeah, you have the salary to play with on this slate. Even if you play Lamar, you still have the salary to play with him. I just think he's good chalk.
Yeah. Collins has 26 targets on 84.5% route participation over the past 3 games. Chiefs defense allowed the 10th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the past 5 weeks. So like a sort of good matchup for receivers, although I did note that it's been particularly good for slot receivers, which is not Nico Collins.
Yeah.
So let's continue talking about the Texans. Just like stick team by team for wide receivers. I think you kind of need to for wide receivers. Tank Tell getting 34% ownership at 5,100. Then we have Robert Woods is 3,000 getting 7% ownership, projecting for just 4 fantasy points. Xavier Hutchinson also 3,000 projected for 2% ownership at 2% ownership, about 3 fantasy points. I think those are the only. Oh, and then Jared Wayne. I don't even know who Jared Wayne is. I think I'm focusing just on those 4, and I think all 4 of them probably do make my player pool. Clearly, Collins and Dell I think should make your player pool in a 150 set. Woods and Hutchinson, we can split hairs there a little bit. For Woods, I think it's worth noting. Actually, let's. What do you guys think? So Woods has been playing a fair amount of slot, which is where you primarily saw John Mechie running from the slot, ran more than 50% from the slot. So I think that Woods probably gets the biggest bump here from John Mechie being out. Do you guys see it the same way?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, Woods played 48% of snaps last week. Mechie had been playing in that 60% range, dropped down to 42 last week, and you saw Robert Woods go from about low 30% of snaps to 48. So it looks like he was a direct beneficiary of Mechie being hobbled. With Hutchinson, he's somebody who I like his talent. He's also been injured, obviously. He only played 16% of snaps last week. I think he has the upside. At one point in the season, he was playing 60% plus of snaps. To my point earlier, running back, not a position that I think you can really get weird at. Wide receiver, I think absolutely is. I think I'd want to be over on Woods, even though he's an old man and probably can't break a long touchdown. I think he can get enough work to be needed. and I could see him getting 2 10-yard touchdowns. But I think this is where you dabble and you go overweight on Woods and you go overweight on Hutchinson.
Wow, he's 32 years old.
Young man. He's a young man.
Old man.
Young man Robert Woods. Yeah, no, he's got plenty of juice left in him. Not worried about that. But so I think I break the tie toward toward Woods because of the slot receiver role. So I think, like you said, we already saw him kind of get more of that role last week with John Mechie hurt, but also just like looking at here, I can pull up so we can look at like just recent weeks where they're running their routes, because it's not like he's running 100% from the slot, but my read on this is that he's more likely to get more of the work because of the slot work. That's
fair.
And I just pull up.
I love 2-game slates, or like just smaller slates where it's like 3 or something.
3, yeah.
So it's not like 37% for Robert Woods. So John Mechie was like the pretty clear actual slot receiver, 66%. Nobody else, like Woods is the leader of the rest of the receivers at 37%, followed by Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson in terms of slot participation. So maybe like if they think that Xavier Hutchinson is the better receiver, they could just use him more in the slot. I don't know. So it's not like a sure thing, but
yeah, I think it's very fair to say that Woods could play 60% plus the snaps tomorrow, and Hutchinson's going to play 30.
Yeah. But to your point, Drew, I think that I agree with you. Like just being overweight on both makes sense. Ravens receivers, Zay Flowers, the pretty clear receiver one, already was getting 56.5% ownership at 5,900. We have
super quick. You may have mentioned this before. Chiefs allowing the highest percentage of targets to the slot in the league.
Yeah.
Did you mention that?
So I did not mention that. I mentioned or maybe I meant to. Maybe I've been talking about I liken him because of the matchup for slot receivers, but maybe I did not mention part of the reason for that is it's the second best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points to slot receivers over the past 5 weeks. So good to bring that up. Yeah,
and 40% of the targets that the Chiefs face are to the slot, and everyone else is mid to low 30s.
Yeah. Interesting note from Matt Butler in chat says, I'm behind listening, but drastic changes for Baltimore defense aligns directly with benching Marcus Williams after week 10 and shifting Kyle Hamilton to safety. Success rate per dropback. Second, I don't know, to mention some of the changes there, which you see it in just schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed has been a big shift there. So that's a good note there from Matt. I was wondering why that might be. So that could be could explain why they've been so much better in recent weeks.
I mean, there was a moment there where you targeted them. Didn't matter who they were playing against.
Yeah,
kind of the Jags, right?
Yep.
But the last couple of weeks, not so much.
Yeah, they've been much better, which maybe throws a little water on my love for Russell Wilson, but I still think very playable here.
Yeah.
All right. So Ravens receivers, Zay Flowers, pretty clearly still the number one. Do we think 56.5% ownership is warranted for Zay Flowers?
Probably because of the price tag, 5,900. He's cheap. He's getting the work. Not that Deontay was taking any of it, but it kind of always stood out in the back of my head. Like, are we going to see Deontay at any point get some elevated work? That was clear the last couple weeks that he wasn't going to. Now we know he's not going to. But at 5,900 in a spot that he's the guy. I want to talk really about I want to double down on the tight ends from the Ravens later on, but I think Zay Flowers is worth it.
Yep. Where is the matchup here? It's a very, very middling matchup against Pittsburgh in recent weeks. I guess can read off my notes here. Steele, are you on the same page as far as Zay Flowers has been fine?
Yeah.
James in the chat, is that Justin Steele?
Sure enough. That is the Justin Steele.
I am he.
Justin, are you wearing a jersey right now? Like a hoodie over a jersey?
Saints hoodie that my father-in-law got me. Shout out to him. It's
that's
sick.
Cool.
I wear it all the time. I wear it too much.
Looks cozy.
Yeah, dude, it's the best.
Are you excited to see Kendre Miller on Monday?
more excited than Dennis Allen.
that is true.
Dennis Allen's going to be on his couch just cussing.
I'm excited. I would be a lot more excited to see Kendra Miller earlier in the year when I had a lot of him in best ball, but
he's not on. I had a ton of him earlier. He's not on any of my remaining teams.
I have him on one left.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, it's at 17th in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers by the Steelers defense over the past 5 weeks. What are we doing beyond? So like you mentioned, Deontay Johnson is away from the team. Nelson Aguilar has been ruled out. Rashad Bateman is questionable, but I would think leaning more towards doubtful based on he had like a cast on his foot. So the ownership numbers here and the projections here are not updated for Rashad Bateman being out. Do we have any kind of read? Is it going to be? Is it time for Tez Walker? Is it Tylan Wallace? You guys have any thoughts on Ravens receivers, or should I pull up some of the recent usage so we can kind of look at it?
I don't know why I drafted a ton of Walker in best balls. Like that was a guy I picked a lot as like my last pick.
Yeah, I did too. I had a ton.
Yeah, I think that feels like a Debro convincing us that the upside was there late round, maybe.
That might have been it,
right? From a
waking up, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
To the point on fit, Tylan Wallace, I feel like fits the Rashad Bateman role really well, and we've seen it earlier this year of long balls of successful touchdowns. I think he's a plug and play, in my opinion. He's certainly not as good as Bateman, but I think the chalk that you will see when Bateman gets ruled out is probably Tylan Wallace bumping up to, it's hard to say the projection. I'm not good at projecting ownership, but the projection right now, to your point, is too low. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 25% owned.
I'd be a little bit surprised by 25%, but like 15 to 20 would be. Okay. And I also am not good at projecting ownership, so we're just kind of throwing numbers out there.
I guess you don't need the salary on this slate, so maybe that's too high.
Yeah, just based on some of the other receivers, are not going to, like Robert Woods being at 7% still as a starter.
Yeah, right.
But maybe people are more excited to play Tylan Wallace because he has at least shown us that one game where he had like 115 yards on 3 catches or whatever. So maybe it is a little bit more likely that he gets some bump here.
Yep.
Any Tez Walker interest?
I mean, to my point earlier, right? Like all you need at this point in a 2-gamer is one receiver to break a 30-yard touchdown, and he's going to be a must-have if he's cheap. I certainly think that it's possible. It's not a priority play, but if his ownership is going to be less than 5% and he's going to play 50% of snaps, like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think playable. Still like I want to see where the ownership numbers come in after Bateman is ruled out. If he is ruled out, which part of the reason I'm doing the show tonight and not tomorrow is this is not the first game, so we're most likely not going to have that information before lock anyway. But yeah, I think Tylan Wallace, I think, is probably the better play, like in a vacuum, and also the more likely to get more ownership, and Tez Walker more of a dart throw, just because they haven't really shown much of an inclination to play either of them. Looking at the route share, like Tylan Wallace, he had one game here in week 13 with 57% route. So
yeah, he popped that game.
Yeah. We have not seen them have any desire to play Tez Walker. He did score a touchdown last week.
Mm-hmm. A little fluky.
Little fluky. So I think
but he's going to have to play. Oh, well, all right, let me step back. That's the point that I want to make on tight end later on, is we're just going to see a ton of 2 tight end sets.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. I was going to say, like, the tight ends look much better, but I think we need to give at least some boost to Tylan Wallace. I think looks like objectively like a good play. Tez Walker, a better dart throw than he would have been with the other receivers healthy, obviously.
Yeah, probably. Maybe this is too bold, but we're going to see week 1 likely production, Isaiah likely production. I know. Sorry,
oh, damn, that is bold.
I'm jumping a little ahead here, but his receiving line is 26.5. Let's go double that.
Is it really 26.5? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, take those ladders, Steele.
Oh, I'm all over it. You don't have to tell me twice.
Nice.
I've learned to just blindly follow whatever Drew says.
Nice. Well, Drew does pretty well for himself, so that's probably a good idea to follow some of Drew's advice. I mean, if I had followed Drew's advice in best ball, I would have drafted some running backs. So I guess maybe I should take that approach more often.
We could be looking good for 1.5 million right now.
We could be, if only.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So enough about Ravens receivers. Let's move on and talk about Chiefs. So now we get Hollywood Brown back for this game is the big change there. That's just one of those. It's one of the strange slates where it's only 2-game slate, but like there's moving parts on every team. With the Chiefs, it would be the addition of Hollywood Brown. Still, Xavier Worthy projected for 11 fantasy points, 35% ownership. DeAndre Hopkins, and are you guys aware that DeAndre Hopkins, like, if he plays more than 60% of snaps and the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, then they give up a 4th-round pick instead of a 5th-round pick, something like that. So they've been like intentionally, at least arguably, that might be the reason they're intentionally keeping him under 60% of snaps. Or maybe it's nothing. It could be just a coincidence because he's an old guy and they don't want to give him a ton of snaps. But clearly, like, not getting the snaps. DeAndre Hopkins, 5,300, 36% ownership, projected for about 10 fantasy points. Hollywood, impossible to project, but projected for 4 fantasy points and 10.5% ownership. And then, of course, you've got Juju Smith-Schuster, 2% ownership. Justin Watson, 1% ownership. So let's work our way from the top. Xavier Worthy, $5,000, 35% ownership. How do we feel about it?
Who is Stingley going to be on mostly for the game?
Let's see if this answers that.
You going to the coverage matchup?
Hollywood Brown is where the coverage matchup has it. Wide receiver cornerback matchups.
I wonder how much ownership Brown ends up coming in at tomorrow.
I think he's being projected for about 11.
Okay. That's tough. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'll pull up the recent games. I guess I already have this open, so I can just put in the Chiefs here. So over the past 5 weeks, this is what the usage has looked like for the Chiefs. Hang on, targets. So Xavier Worthy, 34 targets over the past 5 games. DeAndre Hopkins actually matches him with 34 targets. Just it's 73% route participation for Worthy, 55% for DeAndre Hopkins. And then, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson, both sub 50% route participation, 9 and 8 targets over the past 5 games. So we probably don't need to think about them as much on a 2-game slate with Hollywood Brown back. Do you have any like thoughts on who Hollywood eats into? Like, do we think Worthy and Hopkins keep their roles and it's just the others losing their roles with Hollywood back?
Yeah. Well, we don't have Nico, right? And Justin Watson, and I feel like you can take 15 to 20 snaps away from ancillary receivers and feed those to Hollywood, however many he can take, and the rest stay where they are.
Yep. I think that makes sense.
To your question on Xavier Worthy, I felt like he got off to a slow start. Week 1, he got off to a bang with a fun touchdown, 2 touchdowns. And then a really slow middle of the season. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks, his usage has never been better. 11 targets last week. He has a little rushing upside. I don't expect him to rush for a long touchdown every single week. But, you get to this point where you drafted a receiver early. You talked him up all offseason, and now he's coming under his own and knows the playbook a little bit more. We talked earlier about how the Texans are a really good pass defense, but Xavier Worthy is the type of player that can break any play wide open, regardless of the coverage. I think he's a really solid play. Yeah.
I'm with you. I think, and the ownership coming in at just 35% feels light to me. I think I want to be overweight to that number for Xavier Worthy. So same page there. Did you see anything? I haven't looked closely at the matchup stuff for.
What did you say Xavier Worthy's projected ownership was?
35%.
35. Okay. Saber has him at 38. So that's close.
Okay. Yeah. So it looks like it's actually a positive matchup in recent weeks for Kansas City receivers. Also, more so, mostly for slot receivers and wide right receivers, which is kind of interesting. So who is running from the slot in recent weeks? I'll pull that up, see if we can find any kind of course, again, with Hollywood entering the picture, who knows if this mixes things up. But it's been Juju and Justin Watson who have run the most slot routes.
Here's the other element. You might remember this a little bit more than I do, but Scott Barrett and you talked about it in early weeks, maybe week 5 or 6. And you guys talked about how the Texans have been prone to allowing broken plays, deep passes. And I'm looking at the ADOT on the season. They do have the 3rd highest ADOT on the season, the Texans do. So again, Xavier Worthy, the type that can kind of blow the roof off of a coverage and go for a 50-yard touchdown, at which point you're going to have him. Yeah.
No, that's all right. So we like Xavier Worthy, at least.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, how much interest do we have there? 36% ownership at 5,300.
I was low on him preseason. We talked about it on one of the streams, and I'm not convinced. We saw the good game a couple weeks ago, and I'm just a little bit off of him. To your point, low snap counts, also old, a little slow, and
steroids.
But I just feel like he's not as exciting and doesn't have the slate breaking upside, even though it's only 2 games.
Yeah, I want to see what his targets have looked like in recent weeks.
I think you said he matched him, right?
Yeah, he has matched Hollywood. So it's like, even though he's not running as many routes, they are still 9, 9, and 6 the past 3 weeks in terms of targets for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
But like ultimately he's getting higher ownership at a higher price tag than Xavier Worthy, despite a lower projection. So just like you look at those numbers, like pretty clearly Xavier Worthy looks like the better play. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins still very much in play for me, but
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I want to be above the field there. Whereas Worthy, I think I pretty clearly do.
We saw this with Hopkins a lot the last couple of years, and this was one of the reasons why I was off of him. He is at this point, he is a low ADOT possession receiver with great hands and low separation. Which look, Mahomes is going to need that, especially if he's hobbled and pressured a lot. But it's not the type of player to be a must-have at the end of the day.
Yeah. Steele, I think that you sounded like you have some interest in Hollywood Brown coming in at about 11% ownership. He's 3,000. I'm not finding any kind of coach speak indicating like how much usage he's going to get his first game here. Do you think, like, do you expect him to see significant workload? Do you think that he's just good enough that you don't care? How are you feeling about 11%?
Yeah, I mean, other than Worthy, I don't feel like they've had like a huge big play guy, and being his first game with him, I feel like he's just been like a Ferrari locked up in the garage, and they're probably going to want to like maybe try him out immediately, test the deep ball with him. So, I mean, it's someone what was the projected ownership? I'll probably get like 15%, stay right around there.
11% is where the field's projected at. So you'll be just
okay. I mean, I'll
over the field.
I'll definitely want to be above the field. So like 15 to 20% probably.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. I think Hollywood seems like a pretty strong bet. Drew, how do you feel about him his first game?
Yeah, the Twitter posts, you can probably read too much into it. But for what it's worth, he's been very active the past couple of days. He's got a thank you, Jesus, today when he got activated, stating that he was going to play. Mahomes earlier this week had a time emoji, and then Hollywood Brown retweeted it with a time emoji. There's a connection there. He's obviously excited. Is he excited because he's only going to play 3 snaps or not even play? No, he's probably excited because he's going to be on the field some. So, we're reading the tea leaves here.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can do because the coach, they're not telling us anything. So we're just having to try to read the tea leaves. Who says, they said Hollywood has been uncoverable in practice. I think they said the same thing about Tony. So is what he said. So, which
he probably was. He just couldn't catch it.
Right. Yeah. So maybe Hollywood can actually catch it and it'll matter. And then I don't know. Juju and Justin Watson, I guess, both run some from the slot, so it's a better spot for slot receivers. But yeah, I'm not super excited about either. I think at 1% and 2%, I'll probably have a few shares. I'll probably match the field in a 150 set, but wouldn't make my pool in like a 20 lineup set, I think.
Yeah, you're gonna have more than me.
Okay. The Steelers are without George Pickens, so now everybody else has to take a step up. But Pickens has been out for 2 weeks now, so I guess I'll pull up the past 2 weeks.
I really thought he was going to play this week.
Yeah, me too.
Funny thing is, and this is not actual funny, but the sad thing is I was underweight in best ball all year until the playoffs. Suddenly I have a ton of George Pickens on my teams last week, and I think they might be eliminated now anyway. But
what did they say? How what the strain was with this hamstring? Was it like grade 1, grade 2?
I don't know.
I didn't see either.
That'd be good information. If it's a grade 2, he might be out another week.
Yeah.
So in the past 2 games without George Pickens, Calvin Austin has 8 targets on 70.9% route participation, same as Pat Freiermuth leading the team. Mike Williams, 5 targets on 49% route participation. Scott Miller, 5 targets on 27% route participation. Van Jefferson, just 3 targets, but 64% route participation. I think those are kind of the wide receivers we need to talk about. Starting with Calvin Austin. So 71% route participation, 8 targets over the past 2 games. Maybe not the pass funnel that it had been earlier in the year, but I still think Calvin Austin pretty interesting as the nominal wide receiver 1, I'd say, in Pittsburgh. He's 3,800, 27% ownership. How are we feeling about Calvin Austin?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, look, I think he's going to get a lot of work. I think Russ is always going to want to air it out as much as coaches let Russ cook. And he's the primary, right? He and Freiermuth are the primaries. I like both of them. I've boosted both of their projections on my end to that 10-11 range for both of them. I think the ownership is higher than I would want. But I think it's granted. I think it's valid. I think it's in line with the amount of work that he's going to get and the price that he's at. I got no issues with it.
Yep. So we're all okay with Calvin Austin, 27%. We playing any Mike Williams, 16% ownership, 3,700.
I mean, with how Russell throws the deep ball, I mean, you definitely should have a little bit because, I mean, Mike Williams is one of those deep ball guys. If he catches him once or twice, one of them's a touchdown, he becomes must-have.
He, as Justice Hill is our guy, I think Mike Williams is our anti-guy because when we were in person, Justin, we were excited about Mike Williams with the Jets, and that didn't look too good. We had a lot of props riding on him. He was hobbled. In hindsight, maybe we got a little too eager, but yeah, maybe he can turn around. I thought he looked good last week.
Another hashtag old guy. Tons of those that we're playing on this site. Yeah, I think he's fine. I admit that I have a good amount of interest in Van Jefferson at 0 ownership, even though 3 targets over the past 2 weeks without George Pickens. So the role isn't changing. 64% route participation. I just think Van Jefferson has the ability to break one, and he's only getting 6% ownership at 3,300. So I think he's going to be a part of my. And when I say I have a good amount of interest, I probably will play 12%, double the field maybe there on Van Jefferson, something like that. Yeah. Do you have any interest in Van Jefferson?
I'm good with that. I would actually argue even that his ownership goes down as Bateman gets
good point.
out. So yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, just a large field dart throw, probably not somebody for a small field. Any other? Do you have any interest in Scotty Miller?
Read me his numbers again. If you don't have it in front of you, that's fine. I
got it
earlier.
Over the past 2 games, 5 targets on 27% route participation.
He was always a scrappy player whenever we would see him in his various teams over the last couple of years. Yeah. I just don't see the upside.
Yeah, I think he could, he's capable of a splash play, but on a 2-game slate, that still might not be enough. Maybe more of a showdown play.
Yeah.
And then do we have any other teams that we have not talked about?
No, for receivers, no.
All right. Well done. we made it through receivers. Let's move on and talk about tight ends. Travis Kelce, the clear top tight end in terms of projection, projects 3 fantasy points better than the second best, 37% projected ownership. The role has just been awesome in recent weeks for Kelce over the past 5. Sorry, I forgot I moved this. But he's getting targeted like 10 times per game. How much interest do we have in Travis Kelce?
If Mahomes is hurt and hobbled and getting pressured and needs some quick throws, who else is he going to throw it to other than his old reliable, another old dude, Kelce, but an actual old dude, kind of. He knows where Kelce's going to be at any moment, and if he's looking for a quick pass, 10 plus targets is within range without a doubt.
Yeah. All right, so we're all on the same page there.
Yes.
Fewer targets than I thought in recent weeks, just 38 over the past 5 games. So maybe a little bit of a decline from earlier in the year, but nothing that I'm overly concerned about there for Kelce. Pat Freiermuth, Drew, you already mentioned that you gave a little boost to Pat Freiermuth to get a little more. He's 3,900 with no Pickens, should see more work.
Yeah, I am typically a 1 tight end per lineup in every single slate that I play, even in 2 gamers and 3 gamers. This tomorrow is a 2 tight end slate, and I'll probably have a lot of 2 tight ends. I think with Kelce, with Freiermuth, and with the Ravens guys, look, I think all of them project really well and have a lot more upside than a lot of these small receivers, and a lot higher of a floor than a lot of these cheaper receivers, and they're around the same price. So give me Freiermuth, give me the other tight ends that we'll talk about in a moment. The role is good, the production is good, the touchdown upside is good. It's all good.
HOU-KC was literally asking the question. That was funny as you was explaining that.
Oh, really? That's too funny.
Yep. No, I think that makes a lot of sense going with some 2 tight end sets. Steele, how you feel about Freiermuth at 19%?
Yeah. I was hand building a few lineups earlier, and I was just going kind of like quarterback to quarterback and kind of stacking them that way. And I was definitely, to what he was saying, I had some where I was going like Kelce, Freiermuth, or Mark Andrews, Kelce, just trying to get unique with the double tight end stacks. I mean, with 2-game slate, you kind of have to get unique, especially if you're doing those smaller entries, single entries, 3 max, whatever the case may be. Going double tight end is definitely going to make you different.
Yeah. Yep. Freiermuth, it's interesting that he's again 8 targets on 71% route participation over the past 2 games without George Pickens. I would hope for more, and I think we could. I wouldn't be surprised to see that increase this week, because that's man, you kind of think there's opportunities there for somebody. Should be Freiermuth. As far as the matchups, I guess I'll just quickly go over the schedule adjusted numbers. Texans defense has allowed the 4th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends over the past 5 weeks. So awesome matchup for Travis Kelce from that standpoint. Ravens defense has allowed the 10th fewest, so slightly below average matchup. Steelers defense has allowed the 7th fewest. So again, a poor matchup for the Ravens receivers. And then the Chiefs defense has allowed the 13th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends over the past 5 weeks. So a slightly above average matchup for Dalton Schultz. None of them, though, I think are like when you look at the tight end stuff in particular, the numbers are not actually that big. So the rankings can be pretty big. I mean, this is a big number for Cincinnati defense against Cleveland, giving up a lot, Indy to some extent, but for most of them, they're kind of close together anyway. So the rankings don't impact things that much. Yeah. Dalton Schultz, speaking of, 20.5% ownership at 3,400. I don't know. Again, I've been thinking he was going to have a bigger role with Stephon Diggs out. He hasn't really, I don't think. I don't know what, but now we do have John Mechie out, so maybe now is the time for Schultz. How are we feeling about Dalton Schultz? And that's 20 targets over the past 4 games. So he's getting, I guess, 5 targets a game over the past 4. I don't know. What's your interest level?
Yeah, I actually lowered his projection, not a ton, but a point lower. I don't know. He's the least exciting of the 5 big ones, if you will. To your point, his production hasn't really increased with Diggs out. He's not a primary read. He's not a first target. It's just not very interesting to me, especially when there's upside at the other positions or the other spots.
Fair enough. Steele, how about you?
I was just reading Braden Ross comment, Pat Likely or Andrews Kelce. I think I like Pat and Likely as far as like just being different. Sorry, what was the question, Neil? Sorry, I was distracted.
Schultz at 20% ownership.
Oh yeah. So I mean, if you're gonna be playing guys like Woods, Nico Collins, like those are two guys I'm gonna probably have my hands on. It's gonna be like kind of tough to get to Schultz, especially if I'm I'm gonna definitely be listening to Drew and playing Likely and stuff. And I'm gonna stack him with Kelce. It's gonna be kind of hard to get to Schultz.
Yep. Fair. Actually, before we do, let's talk about those Ravens receivers. But just before we hit there, Noah Gray, 13% ownership. Seems okay. I don't know if has his role been as good. I know he had a spike there for a bit. Let me pull up the game log.
I think it's still been as good.
Yeah, the route participation like down to 36% last week, but still saw 4 targets.
Yeah,
the targets have been pretty strong for Noah Gray. So is he another tight end that you're mixing into those lineups?
I think in Showdown, sure. I just don't know that he has the juice, if you will, to be a must-have on the slate. Unless God forbid Kelce gets injured or something. But he's if he fits, fine. He's not someone that I might prioritize.
Who says at least one red zone target each of the past 5 games.
Yeah.
Actual in the end zone targets he has looks like 4 over the past 5 weeks also. So yeah, like I think he's playable on the team.
Yeah, I guess a touchdown makes him probably a must-have.
Because it could be a slate where no tight end separates also. Like less like I think there are actually some good tight end plays on the slate. So like there are some slates where it's like you're dealing with Tyler Conklin and like really bad tight ends. So then it makes more sense. This one, it's a little bit less likely that no tight end puts up double-digit fantasy points, but still possible. So maybe one touchdown gets there.
Yeah, I agree.
And then Drew, do you want to get into the your reason for? And I'm with you, by the way. I'm liking these Ravens tight ends. We have Mark Andrews coming in at 19% ownership, Isaiah Likely 13%. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, like what the hell are we doing here at sub 20% on both of them? I think both of them should be over 40% owned. If you recall to the beginning of the year in the preseason, there was buzz about the number 2 receiver for the Ravens being Isaiah Likely. And we saw that week 1. We started to see a little bit less of it, I think for a couple reasons. 1, Mark Andrews got healthier. 2, we actually saw Bateman show that he should be the number 2 receiver, and he did that role really well. But now we're at this point where who would you rather have? A rookie wide receiver or Tylan Wallace, who's mainly special teams, or Isaiah Likely, who proved in week 1 and throughout that he can be a primary pass catcher. He's been with the team. He knows the playbook, obviously. And his percentage, his snap percentage hasn't gone down. We've kind of forgotten about him because he hasn't had a big week, but he's still playing 60+% of the snaps. We'll probably see that move up to 75 tomorrow and be more of a early read target. I think he's well within. I've nearly added 50% to his point projection. I think he's a great play.
8 targets in week 13 for Isaiah Likely. And like you said, like just without all those receivers, like are they going to lean in on the unknowns like the Tylan Wallaces and the Tez Walkers of the world, like 100%, or are they just going to boost up these tight ends? So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's so Isaiah Likely 2 targets last week, but 8 targets the week prior to that, 0 targets in week 12, 5 targets in week 11. So he's been kind of sporadic in terms of the targets, but this seems like a spot where he could, like it would make sense for them to lean more in on their known commodities that they know they like. And then Mark Andrews has been like pretty strong. I didn't realize 76% route participation last week for Andrews.
Getting early on him is what led me to my 70K win a couple weeks ago, because he was at 1% owned, but I saw that his production was ramping up. I think he's a smash play as well.
Yep, both look like pretty awesome plays at really low ownership. So yeah, it's a tight end positive kind of week for us here. Looks like. Any interest in Darnell Washington, Michael Pruitt, Irv Smith, Anthony Ferkser? It's Anthony, right? Is it Anthony?
Yeah, not for me. All
right, yeah, Anthony. I don't think so. Maybe on Showdown, but I don't know if we need to do it on the 2-game slate. Actually, I'm since we're bringing it up, I'm curious if Darnell Washington has continued. He saw kind of a bump in route participation for all now, but down to 8% last week. So looks like the dream is dead, maybe, with Darnell Washington. Sad. Thoughts on defenses, kickers, or sorry, not defense, not kickers, just defenses for the 2-game slate.
Justin's always very good about game reads. Justin, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what defense is going to show up.
Well, every time the Ravens and the Steelers play, it's pretty tightly contested and low scoring. I think the last time they played earlier was like 19-17. It was something like that. If you have another game like that, and there's also a turnover to one of those defenses, are probably going to be the one you want. But with such a small slate, I mean, you're going to want to play every single defense. I mean, the Chiefs defense is very good. Spags with how he disguises his coverages and everything. It's pretty fun to watch. So the Chiefs defense, I think the Chiefs defense is going to be the highest owned. I was looking at Sabre earlier; it was like 44% or something. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Texans as well. What Drew was saying earlier with how good their defense has, been surprisingly as well.
Maybe with Mahomes hobbled, a little bit more upside in the defense. If he can't quite plant right, doesn't quite, I don't know.
Look, there's a world, and I hate to even play for an injury, but there's a world where he gets hit hard in the first quarter. Mahomes, hurts his ankle a little bit more, or just realizes that he shouldn't be playing 1 week after a high ankle sprain. When you have one loss on the season and playoffs coming up, it seems a little odd to me. I think there's a world where he doesn't play the second half, at which point you absolutely want the Texans defense.
Yeah, 100%. Lock him in. Carson Wentz comes in. Yeah, load up there. Would love that. All right. So at this point, normally I make a lineup and then I do just a quick review of the Showdown slates. Are you guys interested in making a lineup with me and maybe talking a little Showdown?
Good here.
All right. Sweet. All right. So I've got the lineup pulled up. Let's do 2 lineups because I want to make a Russell Wilson lineup. Just because that's kind of something that I think could be fun. But I know you guys are more into some other quarterbacks. Would you rather throw in a Lamar Jackson, something like that?
No, let's see what a Russell lineup looks like.
All right. Love it. All right. So let's throw in Russell Wilson, see what we can do with it. I think Calvin Austin, and I'll do Pat Freiermuth in this one. I'll mix in some Van Jefferson here or there, but I think Calvin Austin going to be a big part of those lineups for me. So now we have 6,100 left per player. If we throw in a defense, let's try that. Let's throw in the Texans defense for this one. Now we're up to 6,700 left per player. So this is part of what I like about it is okay, now you can just play a lot of your favorite plays here. Maybe we start at wide receiver and then get in, see if we want to play Henry and Mixon or go down a little bit.
Sorry, in the chat, TJ in according to JJ. Any impact? Who are we talking about here?
TJ Watt.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's probably who he's talking about.
Yeah, there's some impact for sure.
Yeah, I mean it makes it a little bit of a tougher matchup for Lamar.
I would say go ahead and add Nico Collins to that lineup. I mean,
yeah, that's a good call.
I ran my Sims already, and it gave me 90% Nico Collins.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I was at too.
Do we want to throw in Xavier Worthy also?
Yeah, I love the upside there.
Now, if we did a second tight end, we could probably fit both of the top backs. Let me see if we can do that. If we can fit likely, if we did both top
What
back.
what tournament are we building for? I didn't see. Sorry,
I always build for like the large field
the big
stuff.
one. Yeah.
So this one could be Andrews really at 4,300. We could put Andrews in here.
Sure.
Likely is.
Yeah, you got 1,000 savings off of likely. Another reason why I just feel like he's an amazing play.
Yeah. I mean, we like, so in large field stuff on 2 games,
Totally.
I do sometimes like leaving salary too. So like, I wouldn't be opposed to doing this. But then it's just a matter of like, is there anybody else that would be a clear upgrade here? And I guess that the answer would probably be Russ would be the easiest upgrade of this group. Although the 2 that you could actually afford would be Mahomes and Stroud, and I think Russ could outscore them. So I'd be okay with just running it like this. But
How
like
much?
I said,
What would? Never mind. It's not enough. I was gonna say if you tried to get up to Lamar for like just pure rushing upside, but I don't think it's gonna be nearly enough.
I mean, it could work if we got rid of one of Henry or Mixon, like downward.
Yeah, you would get rid of Henry probably.
Najee Harris. Yeah. So that would be the way to potentially play that. And I don't usually submit the lineups. I'm making her just kind of like playing around with what are some of the things we could do. And that is one that like throw Lamar in there, take out Henry. You could put in
Pacheco
or Pacheco. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say Pacheco since Mahomes is hobbled.
Yep. And this one leaves 800 on the table. I think that looks like a pretty strong lineup. I'm usually inclined still to stack. We do have Isaiah Likely though, so we are stacked. Never mind. So yeah, I think this looks like a strong lineup also.
Looks like a winner.
Yeah, looks like a winner to me. All right, do you want to just look at the showdown slates while we're here?
I just ran my 150 build and Sims with my update projections. You want me to read through like my top 10?
Top 10 for the showdown slate or for
the 2-gamer before we move on to
showdown? Yeah, let's hear it.
So I got Nico at 90+%, which look, I always get scared of having anyone at 90%, but I think it makes sense. And my number 2, which I'll probably reduce a little bit, I guess. I still like it though. Isaiah Likely at 85%. Like I said, I updated his projection to 11, and I think that is very fair. And of course, it pops because his ownership is just way too low. Number 3 is Lamar at 80%. Number 4, we dropped down a good amount in ownership at 60% to Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers. So we're talking big time on Ravens, which is great. It's highest over under. I think that total for the Chiefs is too high anyways, with Mahomes hobbled and Texans defense being better than people realize. And then after Zay Flowers, we have Pacheco at 50%, Mixon in the 40s, Najee at 40, Texans defense at 40, which I absolutely love. Xavier Worthy right under that at 39, and then Robert Woods at 34. Honestly, I might make a couple tweaks to this, but I'm pretty happy with where I landed.
I like it.
I like it too. And one thing that I think that you are already doing that I think the field doesn't necessarily always do is you're planning ahead for the news that Rashad Bateman is ruled out, which if that news doesn't come in until after lock, all of those players are going to look even better because they're going to come in even lower owned because other people didn't plan ahead for Rashad Bateman being out. So like planning ahead for that scenario, which seems, I don't know, I feel like it's like 90% likely that Bateman is out.
Oh, I'd be shocked if he's in.
Yeah, so I think like that's another thing that I like to do, and I do that like for NBA and stuff too. But like really, like NFL, pretty straightforward. Just like plan ahead for that. Keep those spots open for Tylan Wallace, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, like all of these Ravens that are going to look better if Rashad Bateman is ruled out. So yeah, I like those exposures sound really, really good to me.
I mean, here's the beauty of if Bateman, worst case scenario, gets ruled in, you can move a lot of the cheap Ravens exposure that you have to the cheap pass catching offense for Pitt. Or Bateman, like he's in the upper 4Ks, like you can make a couple swaps and get to him. It's not the end of the world.
Yep. Good point. All right. I'm going to move over to the showdown slate. We can take a brief look at so I guess the first one is Houston, Kansas City. Captain ownership. Joe Mixon leading captain ownership at 16%. Nico Collins 14%. Mahomes 13.5%. Kelce 8.5%. Just looking through these numbers, standing out to me. I mean, Xavier Worthy at 4% looks really strong to me. Nico Collins, I feel like I'd like to be over 13.5%. Travis Kelce 8.5%, I think, is a number I want to get above. Isaiah Pacheco 5% also looks really good. Tank Dell to some extent. What's standing out to you guys?
Earlier when we were talking about receivers was Tank Dell. Have you talked seen anything as to why his production has been so weak? And I know there's been a couple barely missed plays, but have you noticed anything?
No, I was gonna make a joke there for a second on a non-laugh matter, which is I think it's because he got shot. is I think the reason that thing tells me.
I swear that's where my head went. I was thinking it.
Yeah, just like it's not really funny, but also I think that's the reason that Tank Dell is just like he hasn't been nearly as good this year, and I think he just needs time to recover, because it would be a shame if he doesn't recover at some point. But I think like on the season, his like yards per route run is significantly worse than last year.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. You know, you hate to hear.
1.45 yards per route run this year. Last year he was at.
Yeah, he crushed it last year.
Yeah, it was 2.4. So like dropped a full yard per route run just about. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's it's also like I don't think CJ Stroud has been as good this year. So I think that might be part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple factors there. Arcathelza says everyone wants to play Collins tomorrow, but nobody wants to play Stroud. I've been trying not to put the comments up on the screen because they just go right over Steele's face whenever I do it.
It's fine. Don't worry about
it. Braden says, asking, do you guys play Underdog, Primetime Palooza, Battle Royale, etc.? I love Primetime Palooza in particular. Steele, I know you don't really do Underdog. I feel like it would be right up your alley though, because you like these short slates. Primetime Palooza is like you do it just for the 2 Saturday games. You're doing drafts against people. I feel like you would enjoy it. But yeah, I love those.
Is the lobby big enough on those Primetime Palooza?
Yeah, no, I mean it's like 10,000 a first. It's not like huge prize pools. But it's it's like you're drafting in groups of 4. There are 4 of you in your draft room, and you just draft until you have a quarterback, running back, 2 wide receivers, tight end, and a flex, I think is all right. So getting back to the showdown slate, so looking at these captain numbers, can you guys read them? Is it big enough? Do I just make
I can read them.
All right. Anybody standing out to you? Oh, that went too far. Anybody standing out to you in terms of? Oh no, I can't go that. Hang on, because you can't see it now. Projected ownership again: Mixon 16%, Collins 14%. Anybody that you think looks too low owned for the showdown slate?
I'm always of the stance of pass catchers in captain, minimal QBs in captain, unless they're high upside rushing QBs. So with that being said, I probably avoid both QBs in captain for first showdown. I think Mixon is fine because of all of his potential. But Nico's probably my favorite, and then go from there.
Same. I think Nico probably my favorite also, getting lower owned than Mixon.
I'm right but there I do with you. If I was to stray away from Nico, maybe Kelce, just because what Drew was saying earlier, you could just catch a ton of passes over the middle with plays that aren't really developing.
Yeah, 10, 80, and 2 is not out of the question.
Yeah.
No. Yep. Worthy, I think, has that big play potential. So in a like low scoring game, I could see Worthy being the guy you need at 4% owned. Looks pretty good. And then in terms of flex ownership, So we've got Mahomes 46%, Mixon 42%, Stroud 42%. Collins once again looks good to me at 39%.
Yeah.
Kelce 32%. Dalton Schultz only 4,000, getting 26%. Like more interest, I think, on the showdown slate.
Here's the play: fading Mahomes. I mean, it's really bold, but we haven't even seen him put up the high upside scores this year, and now hobbled and against a good pass defense. I mean, give me more Nico and give me more Mixon and more Kelce even, and remove the Mahomes.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to remove the Mahomes, but I
probably wouldn't either if I was 115. But
yeah,
if you're doing 1 to 3 lineups and you're okay with taking some risks,
yeah, taking a light stance there. I think that makes sense. Pacheco again coming in at 25% ownership looks pretty good at 8,000 to me. That's a number that I want to be on top of.
Yep.
Hopkins,
I forgot for a second we were doing Showdown.
Yeah. Robert Woods only 16% ownership at 1,000. Obviously, that's going to change though. With no, we already have Mechie out here, so yeah, he's already been. I mean, that seems like a number I want to get well on top of. 16% at 1,000 for Robert Woods.
Yeah. And look, I'm good with kickers even in this game. I typically don't like kickers, but both of these offenses are going to move the ball down the field at least decently against a defense that can stop a drive pretty well. You know, we could see multiple 40-plus yard field goals. It's hard to predict, which is why I don't like to play it. But I think they're well within optimal range. Yeah,
I think I agree with you on that. Hollywood Brown 3,000 getting 12% ownership here. Once again, looks pretty good.
Yeah, people are going to shy away of spending 3,000 on a player that they don't know how much he's going to play, but the upside is there.
Xavier Hutchinson getting 6% ownership at 800 seems like a pretty strong play here. I actually think I might mix it. I'll probably throw in some Juju Smith-Schuster and Justin Watson on Showdown, just because it is, again, like they played more of the slot, which is a better matchup for the Chiefs in this one. Watson getting Watson would be my preference of the two because he's only 1,200, 2% owned, and he's had a role for like years now. Like he just always has somewhat of a role. So I think that he looks pretty good for a Showdown play.
And a touchdown roll.
Yeah, and a touchdown roll. What about P-Ryan? Any interest like P-Ryan at 7.5% ownership? Can we do it? I don't know.
Not too exciting for me.
Yeah, I'm not that enthusiastic.
Doesn't sound exciting.
Yeah.
All right, I think that does it for. I guess let's make a lineup or two for the Showdown slate real quick, and then move to the second Showdown slate. All right, NFL.
What does donk mean in the way it's being used here? Robert Woods is a donk.
Oh, I don't know in that sense. I was thinking like a donk is like somebody who's bad at betting. It's
a donk is a donkey, poker term.
Yeah.
And so Robert Woods is it means he's a joke.
Okay.
Got it.
You're a donk, not AOM. No, I don't mean that. All right, Nico Collins, we're going to throw into the captain spot. Let's throw the donk in there. Because I think at 1,000, he's not getting enough ownership, regardless of whether he's a good football player. Who else? Who else do we want to throw into this line? We've got 81.25 left per player.
Let's say Kelce.
Yeah.
Kelce at 8,600. So we still have 79.66.
Let's fade the Mahomes and go Pacheco here, and then the other two Texans players.
We want to go Stroud since we have both Woods and Collins a captain. And then, I mean, do we want to go Texans defense, like full fade Mahomes, or
we do have two of their offense that we would need to score touchdowns in order for them to be optimal.
Kelce and Pacheco, you think need to score touchdowns?
I think they need to score a touchdown to be in the winning lineup, right?
Oh, I think Kelce could get there just on like 8 receptions for 80 yards.
Yeah.
If it's a low scoring game.
Yeah. I would say either Fairbairn or Texans.
I'll be fine. Is Fairbairn? Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. I mean that leaves 700 on the table. I think that makes a lot of sense. We got the 2 pass catchers from Houston, Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and then also have CJ Stroud in there. We've got Kelce and Pacheco from the Chiefs, and then Kaimir Fairbairn, kicker for the Texans. Looks good. I think this makes sense. Yeah.
What if you didn't play a quarterback? If you took CJ out, would that let you get Mixon? No, never mind then.
Ooh. But if we got rid of Fairbairn and played somebody else there, then we could do
you could go defense then? Is that enough for defense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only leaves 100 on the table, so you're probably being duped with this lineup, I would guess. But
neither quarterback is going to be unique.
Yeah. So I would guess this one is duped like 30 times maybe on the main slate, but not like 100.
Yeah.
You think?
Actually, not on this one because this is actually a smaller slate. I guess I'm thinking more of like the milli makers, whereas this is only I think like 50,000 at first. So actually, no, I don't think it's.
I don't know. I feel like since there's no quarterback, it wouldn't be duped that much.
Yeah,
really? You might be right.
I mean, you're talking 60% plus ownership on both quarterbacks.
True. Yeah, I just think like because we're not leaving any salary on the table and we're still playing like fairly chalky most places, like Collins, Kelce.
Captain,
yeah, but we are Woods like a little bit lower owned, and like you said, no quarterback, and we're playing defenses against the opposing team, which some people don't do. So maybe not as much as I'm thinking. All right,
should we have the positions on screen? By the way, I don't know if you care or not, but
the positions,
like as you review the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, your breakdown.
Yeah.
Overlay.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I usually just leave that up, but I can.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to. There's no just because now there's a big blank spot up here.
All right.
Hey, it's your show.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here's what I usually do. I usually throw up questions and lineups.
There we go.
It makes sense. Yeah. All right. Let's look at the other showdown slate quick. So that would be Pittsburgh, Baltimore. At captain, 25% going to Lamar. 15.5% to Derrick Henry. Sorry, what were you saying? Do you think that's a fair number at captain?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would actually probably if I was doing 150 in this one, which I might end up doing, I'd probably remove Henry from captain. With his lack of passing upside, he's kind of going to have to run in 2 in order to be optimal captain, which is unlikely.
Yeah, I think that is.
It's unlikely because Isaiah likely is going to catch 2 himself.
That's right. So no room for it. You said Derrick Henry you would remove?
Yeah.
Zay Flowers getting 11%. I don't know. Kelvin Austin.
Our group chat tomorrow is going to be electric when Likely's going off.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Can't wait for the big Likely game. All right.
I wish that was the first game.
Something going on with my my chat. I can't scroll right now. It's very strange. Oh, I don't know what I'm accidentally clicking things because it's there's something going on with my chat. But anyway, so I don't think I can read chat right now. Maybe that'll change. Obviously, some of this ownership going to change when we get Bateman news because this obviously people are making their lineups after we get that news for the showdown slate. But in the flex, Lamar 56.5%, Russ 43.5%, Derrick Henry 37%. See, even like as much as I like Russ on the main slate, I don't like him as much on the showdown slate because now he's getting a good amount of ownership. You're not really getting any different.
Yeah.
Calvin Austin 23% looks pretty good at 4,800. Justice Hill 20% seems fair. Likely again 3,200, 22% ownership. I mean, that's a strong play.
What are we doing?
What are we doing, folks? Maybe that comes up after Rashad Bateman is ruled out.
Maybe
because it still has Bateman in.
Yeah, but I think the natural thought process is all right. Receiver out. Which receiver is going to take his place? No one really thinks about the tight end replacement.
That is true. Yeah. Scotty Miller 4% actually looks like a pretty strong number. We talked about him earlier as a showdown play, and I think looks good.
How big is showdown for this game?
It is. Let me look. bigger than the first one. I know that. This is
that's the later 100K to first, 500K total.
Yeah.
I think I just need to lock in likely on 150 lineups.
They let us down with their sizing of these contests. It's only 50,000 for the morning slate. Like, what are they doing? Come on, DraftKings.
Yeah. Yeah, you could easily go 100K to first in the early game and 200 to or 150 in the later game.
Yeah. Andrews also 20% ownership, 6,400. Just want to note that. Yep. Let's go and here I'll just enter. Let's enter this one.
Yeah, that one's a winner. Enter it.
And we'll find out how duped it is. But although this is not the Millie Maker, so we won't actually know much. So hopefully nobody dupes that one. Don't dupe us, bros. All right. What's the other? Pitt Baltimore. So this is for that $20 lineup. Lamar captain, Isaiah likely feels like the first two spots we go here.
Yeah, go with it.
All right. Now what? 71.
I thought Drew was about to fight you because you didn't go likely captain.
That's true.
I will have some likely captain.
Yeah. Pepperoni says, remember when Neil claimed this would be a shorter, efficient stream, but he notes that he's not complaining about it. Yeah, I mean, I've said that many times, and it has never happened.
Especially if we join.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Mark Andrews? Do you want to do double tight end?
Lamar at captain? Sure.
I feel like double tight end, kind of unique in its own way. Who do we want from the Steelers? Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth.
We talked up Najee early, like an hour and a half ago.
We could throw Najee in there. We need somebody to save a little bit of salary.
Pat Freiermuth?
Freiermuth is 5,800. So then that would allow us to get up to that kind of puts us in an awkward salary range.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, like for leaving salary on the table, it's kind of ideal, but I don't know if we want to. I don't know. Let's see what else.
Who would you want to get up to? Zay, maybe.
Yeah, well, let's see if we put Zay in there. Who could we get to? I mean, Austin would leave 700 on the table.
Yeah, it's not bad. I like that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Looks pretty good. We got all of the primary pass catchers for Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. I also, and this is something I haven't like tested, but I sort of suspect that rushing quarterbacks in the captain spot don't get mega stacked very often. Like a lot of people are just going to play Lamar naked or playing with one pass catcher. So us putting him in here with 3 pass catchers in the flex, I feel like is actually sort of unique, and you still get that awesome correlation. So yeah, this looks like a strong lineup. Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it. Did you guys have anything else to say about any of these slates before we call the stream?
I'm likely going to win.
That's funny. That's good. Are you guys doing your podcast at all these days? Where's No
We're really busy, both of us, with some travel and whatnot. But Justin and I, we were literally just talking about it a couple days ago. We're going to do it. I think what we're going to do, we'll do a combo of recordings, but also more live, like leading into a game or during a game to chat it out. A little bit more engaging. We had a really fun time a couple weeks ago on an early morning while a game was going on. We were talking about upcoming games. We had like 2,000 people watching us. It was a lot of fun. I think we'll do more of that.
Hell yeah. All right. Anything else coming up? Anything else? Anywhere people can find you? Twitter. I know Drew tweeted this out. I guess going to retweet you for anybody who's not already following you guys on Twitter. But cool. Thank you guys for surprising me. That was a fun surprise. I was just going through it, and then bam, there's my friends on the screen. How did that happen?
Merry Christmas.
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, thank you for showing up. So appreciate Drew and Justin. Appreciate all of you for hanging out with us throughout this show, through this late night stream. It's now 1:45 a.m. my time, 2:45 Eastern time. So hopefully some people watching in the morning. Make sure you subscribe to the video if you're not to the channel if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Let's win some money this Saturday.